I'm Jules C. Olivier, so Olivier. I served in World War II, as my cap indicates. In December 7th of that year, of course, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. That shook us, a bunch of us up. At that time, I didn't have a particular goal. I'd always wanted to be a military pilot. As a matter of fact, I was studying mechanical engineering in a prelude to aeronautical engineering, because that's the area I wanted to go. But at any rate, when the bombing took place, immediately I started figuring out how I could get into the service as a pilot. And I found out that they had a program going on, which is called a Civilian Pilot Training Program, CPTC. And I enrolled in that, and I learned how to fly in a what do you call it again? Here we go again. In the bug. I mean, it was a little light plane.
The Piper Cub?
Piper Cub, you got it. Thank you. But at any rate, but no wings. You were just graduated, and you had a pilot license. At any rate, what I didn't realize at that time, but I'm glad, was that when I signed up for that, I also signed up to join the service. It was kind of in the back there. So what I was, it automatically put me in the enlisted reserve. So I was not on active duty. I went home, and that was in May of 1942. In October, they called me.
How old were you then at this time?
I'm sorry?
What was your age and at this time?
18 when I first signed up. 19 when they called me. Up at my birthday's in August. But at any rate, so they called me up, and I was sent to San Antonio, Texas. They called it the SAC. It was strategic. It was what the hell was it? Now I'm going to check it out. It was well, it was a cadet center, aviation cadet center. When you get there, you don't know for sure what you're going to get. They haven't committed themselves at all. You have to go through a bunch of tests. Some of us were able to pass all the exams, physical and otherwise, to be scheduled to be trained as pilots. Some were not, but they did good enough that they were able to be trained as bombardiers navigators. Some were not able to do that. They went out. Anyway, so I got the pilot training. My first place that I went to was in Oklahoma. It was Cimarron Field, and just outside of Oklahoma City, and that was called pre-flight. That was the pre-flight area, basic training. Some of the guys found out that they really were not pilots, and they got what they call washed out. You know, so they didn't make it, but I didn't. I made it. The next place I went to was the medium plane. So we were playing the we call it the Volti vibrator, which is the basic. Probably that was the only place above it. None of the others were particularly special. But I did have a couple of situations that happened on me that shook me up a little bit. We do what they call cross-country flying. Mm-hmm. And I took off on mine, and I got out to the end and turned and was heading back to the base. The engine quit. So thankfully, we'd been trained pretty good on that. I was able to pick up from the air, pick out a farmer's field, and I came in and right over a fence, and I landed on that. Struck a rock, sharp rock, and it blew a tire out, but it didn't damage the plane. So anyway, they came and picked me up and took me back. I thought, well, that's probably it. I'm going to probably get washed out. But they was very happy with the fact that had the presence of mind and collective. So then the next thing, we go to Eagle Pass, Texas. That was for my advanced training. Probably the one that I enjoyed the most. I still think of that plane. It was the AT-6. It would have been okay with me if I'd have stayed here and flew that through the whole war. That was my honey. I thought I was going to be a fighter pilot. I really did. I mean, that was what we were being trained for. And I loved going up into the clouds and circling around and making the floops and nipping the tip of the clouds. Unfortunately, that wasn't to be the case. When I graduated out of a class, I got the book. I think it was a class of about 56. Only 7 of them were picked to go to fighter school. I was not one of those. So I was obviously going to be going to a bomber or what do you call it? Like a DC-3.
Yes.
But anyway, turns out that they assigned me to the B-26 Marauder. I had never heard of one, but when I finally did, it shook me up. That was the one they called the Widowmaker. A bunch of bad names. There wasn't a good name for it, but it really wasn't that bad. It really was not. It was just that people didn't know how to fly it yet, and it took them a while to learn that the B-26 didn't fly like other airplanes. It was an airplane to itself. Most of the other planes, like the B-17 and the 24s and whatnot, took off around 100 miles an hour. The B-26 had to be 135, 140. Today, that's no big deal with these jets, but they prepared for that. We were not. They had a deal down in Tampa. It was a ship a day in Tampa Bay, and they did. They lost a lot of training planes. It was, but anyway, I digress. My first assignment was to Barksdale Field in Louisiana, Shreveport, and I met my crew that I was going to go overseas with. Donald Allman was the pilot, and Wilbur Fogg was the navigator bombardier, and I was the co-pilot. And I wound up doing a bunch of co-piloting. But a co-pilot is a pilot,
Of course,
okay?
yes, yes.
As a matter of fact, he's integral to the thing. They don't want the pilot to take off by himself because there's so many things to be taken care of in the plane prior to and the co-pilot has to do that. Anyway, we were there. I graduated in August, and I was just right after my 20th birthday, incidentally. And we're running down of time.
No, so
Okay.
I'm just periodically making sure that we're still good. Don't worry about me.
Okay. Well, at any rate, that just distracted me. Okay, so we were there from early September to December. Don't remember exactly, but I think it was like December the 20th or something like that. From there, we flew, my crew and I, we flew to Savannah, Georgia to get our equipment, all sorts of stuff. One of the things they did is they fitted us with an oxygen mask. I have no sense of smell. Nobody ever asked me if I had a sense of smell. But the doctor there at Savannah says, "You don't have a sense of smell." I said, "No, I don't." He said, "How in hell did you get this far?" I said, "No one ever asked me." He said, "Well, I'm not going to stop you. You've got this far. We'll go." So The next, when we left Savannah with a brand new B-26 model B-45, and we flew down to West Palm Beach, Florida. And when we landed there, I saw probably what I think was the cleverest nose art on a plane. It was on a B-24. The B-24 landed there was only about that high off the runways, because it was squat. And because of that, and because it was when they landed, they had to kind of tip back a little bit. The tail would hit and spark. So they put a skid back there to prevent that. But anyway, whoever did this nose art, it was a B-26. He was skidding along. It was a dragon, Molasses dragon. Okay. Anyway, it was a clever, very clever one. From there, we went to Puerto Rico, Burnquin Field.
Now, did you have any nose art on your B-26? Did you have nose art on your B-26 as well?
Not we took it. I never had an opportunity to do that. Okay, and there were some of them had, but most of the nose art was put on by the maintenance crews.
Right.
Okay. Anyway, we flew down to Burnquin Field in Puerto Rico. Stayed there about just 2 days. And then from there we went to British Guiana, which you don't have that anymore. It's just Guyana now. But it was a British Guiana. And they had, when we got there, they were very nice. They brought a bunch of girls out from town and had a dance out there. That was nice. From there we went to Belém, Brazil.
Wow.
Okay. And we stayed there just 2 days. That was my first time to ever eat fresh pineapple. I almost went apeshit on it. I just love that stuff. So anyway, but then we were there 2 days. We went down to Natal, Brazil. Natal had a reputation for what they call a Natal boot. It's like an engineer's boot. It was made kind of an orangey, reddish colored leather. Mm-hmm. I bought 2 pair, and they were nice. They were just very kind of. From when we left Natal, we went to an island way out there in the Atlantic, too far for the plane to fly on its regular gas. So they loaded a big tank, they called it a Bombay tank, filled it with gasoline so we could fly it. It's Ascension Island is the name of the place we were going to. I didn't understand it at that time. No one ever told me that. It's a tiny little speck out in the Atlantic. Not that easy to find. Thank goodness our navigator was right on point. We went right to it. But I heard later on that sometimes people got hung up on the Germans would send out a frequency that was exactly the same that was being sent out by Ascension Island, but it was off to the side. And like I said, it was a long way out there. It was well over 1,000 miles. You didn't have time to look for the island, okay, or you'd run out of gas. But we did. We made okay. When we left Ascension Island, we went to British Guiana. No, that was in. It's on the west coast. I mean, I don't remember the name of it.
Ghana, probably Ghana, Africa, or you found?
Yeah, it's in Africa.
Yeah, Ghana. Yeah.
I think it was at Liberia.
Liberia, yes.
I think so.
Okay, probably Monrovia, Liberia, or somewhere around there. Maybe?
Well, yeah, that was the closest thing because it juts way out into the, but we made it. That was about the same distance, but just a little bit less. From there, flew to Casablanca, but we made 2 stops on the way. One of them, I can't remember the name of it, but it was a little Tindouf, Tindouf, and then we were told that was where the film for, what was it, Casablanca, not Casablanca, but one of those films in World War II.
Casablanca or something like that.
I don't remember. It's
Now let me go back to that transatlantic flight. Were you guys flying by yourselves, or were you in a formation of
no,
some
by
planes?
ourselves.
Totally by yourself.
Yeah,
Both trips.
Yeah, but we were shorter distances once we got on
Right.
reached Liberia. But anyway, we made the 2 stops on the way up. I don't think we stopped at Marrakesh. I think we stopped on one just this side of it, and then we went into Casablanca. We arrived in Casablanca on about the 22nd of December of the year. I had never not been home for Christmas, and I was feeling a little bit of blue, and I went into town, and there was a place called the Bar Nolly's, Nolly, Bar Nolly. And I met a this is really, my memory is starting to slip some, but I met a guy, another GI, and he was drinking something called Sparkling Burgundy. He offered me a taste of it, and I said, boy, that tastes like soda pop. So I ordered a bottle. Wine is nasty. Wine slips up on you. I'd be sitting it there, and I'm busy drinking it, and I got up to go to the restroom. I don't remember anything after that. Okay, from that point on, we flew to. Anyway, we made 2 or 3 stops across the North Africa, and then from there we flew to Sardinia, which is where I started my combat.
And so I guess you fought in the North African campaign. Is that where they were shipping?
I did not serve. We did not fly combat out of North Africa. Mm-hmm. My group had, mm-hmm. and had only recently moved to Sardinia, so I was lucky enough to miss that, because it was apparently they hated it. Anyway, so from there we went to, as I said, to Sardinia. I was stationed at one Villacidro. You'd think Cedro, Chidro. Anyway, we started. Okay. The pilot was an experienced pilot, but he was not an experienced combat pilot. So his first 5 missions had to be flown as co-pilot with one who was experienced, which meant that I sat it out. Anyway, so then finally, when he finished that, I think I flew 4 or 5 missions with him as co-pilot, and after that, they started putting me with different ones. And to be honest, I'm trying to remember. I think I flew only 1 mission as pilot in Sardinia, but we left there in mid-September, and we went to Corsica, and there I did fly several. I mean, it's
so in Sardinia, let's talk about Sardinia some. What type of missions were y'all flying in Sardinia? I mean, where were you going after?
Good for you. One of my first missions was on the Monte Cassino. I think that was a mission that I was on, but I was flying that one as what they call a chaff plane. Mm-hmm. You know what chaff is?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Tinsel.
Mm-hmm.
It's like stuff you put on a Christmas tree. As a consequence, I didn't see the bombers at all. We flew in over the top of them, dove down so we could pick up speed and get out in front of them so we could start dropping the tinsel by the time they got there. But one of the planes from my squadron was hit on the right engine, and one of the photographers with the I think it was K10 or K12 or whatever cameras, caught it just as that engine was starting to fall away from the plane. It's a fabulous photo. Of course, the people in the plane didn't think so. None of them survived. They all died. At any rate, Sardinia was okay. As a matter of fact, it's something I skipped over. I didn't enjoy living in that tent, and I didn't know how long we were going to be in Sardinia. And I made arrangements to build myself a little house. Labor was cheap as it could be. Let's see how we go. A haircut in Sardinia was like, I forget what is it. It was the equivalent of 5 cents to us. But to them it was like $5. So when an American would walk in, they'd kick a Sardinian out of the chair to make room for him. And it didn't take long for the price to go up. But it was okay. It was still dirt cheap. But at any rate, but because the American dollar was so good, I was able to get that house built for something like $50.
Wow.
Now, there's that, when we say a house, it wasn't anything great. Let me see, I'll point it towards the camera. That's it.
Yeah, well, I'll get a tighter shot of that later. Okay, that's awesome.
Okay.
That's cool.
I called it the Waldorf Astoria.
That's a nice little house, though.
Huh?
That's a nice little house, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was about 9 by 12, so I had two little rooms in it. The one was a reception room, and the other was my bedroom. But anyway, we stayed in, as I said, Sardinia was kind of beat up, okay? And it's not their fault. I mean, they were recipients of battles.
Mm-hmm.
When we went to Corsica, what a difference. It was much nicer. The people were friendly. That's French for Corsica. We were there, and at the time it seems like we were there longer, but we left there in November. Got there in September. We left in November.
And how many missions out of Corsica were you?
I don't remember exactly.
A bunch.
Okay,
So-
I just, most of mine were in Sardinia. Okay, I would say. Well, I think I flew at least 3 as pilot, and the rest of them as co-pilot.
Those missions out of Sardinia, how much resistance did you get? How much resistance from the Germans did you get? Did you get bounced by fighters, or were there a lot of flak?
You know, that's funny. I'm glad you mentioned that. I do not ever recall seeing a German fighter.
Wow.
Okay, until we got to Germany, and I went and sat down in one at a airport that obviously was not at FW190,
Wow.
and I got a picture of me sitting in it.
Wow. Yeah, I guess it had been knocked out, or was it in still flying condition?
I don't know. I didn't try to fly it. I mean,
obviously.
far as I know, it was just there was several. Well, I don't know now.
That's all right.
Anyway, now,
Do you remember, like, your first mission and like those feelings that you had, like, you know, the apprehension?
Do I
or
remember my
whatever?
first mission?
Yes, sir.
You're right. It's called we were on the P&B steel mills in Leghorn, Italy. And most flak is black. Pops up. But the Germans had colored flak too. They had red and green and black. Black was just to shoot. Red was to warn the fighters not to come in. That was prior to them starting to shoot the black. Then when they were getting ready to stop the black, they'd shoot the green so the fighters could come in. But I never saw any fighters. I really didn't. And almost every one of my friends that I claimed that they did, that they, I've got one, well, I won't go into it, it could take too much time, but a fellow that I met later kept a diary, and he was kind enough to give me a copy of it. That helped me to write this, because like the dates exact, because he had it day by day by day. For me, I remember we did this and did it, but the day is it's like the day that we left Sardinia and went to Corsica, the day we left Corsica and went to France. So those things were in there. But anyway, so when we went up to France, we went to Dijon. Dijon, I don't think Dijon had really been battered that bad. It was we could see some damage, but it had fared so much better than both of the other two places I'd been. I did enjoy my time there. I went into town and somehow found out that the military police were from Franklin, Louisiana, which is where my mother and dad are from. So I'd go visit them frequently. Trying to remember. When I finally completed my missions, the last one that I went on, I'll get to that, we were about halfway to the target, maybe a little more.
Where were you going? Do you remember?
I'm co-pilot, I don't know. Hey, pilot probably didn't know either.
Right.
We followed the lead plane.
Right, right.
When I went to college, there was a young man there that was about a year and a half older than me. His name was Charles Burgess. Charles, we were never buddies, but he liked me, apparently. And he tried to get me into his fraternity, which is Alpha Sigma Kappa, ASK. It never happened, but nonetheless he did. While I was in Sardinia, I made a trip to, twice they sent me to Naples to go to the Isle of Capri for recuperation. And I made the trip there, and I went over to Capri, and I came back to Naples and was getting ready to go up to my room, which was on the 7th floor and knew no elevators. And I looked there and I said, damn, that guy looks familiar. And I said, Charles? And he looked around, it was Charles Burgess. Okay, so a little later, he was flying the P-39s, the Airacobra.
Airacobra, yeah.
And he flew his Airacobra down to where I was, and we had a nice lunch together and went out there. And it took that. I'm standing by one of my planes when we were had the picture taken.
Did he survive the war being an Airacobra pilot?
Yes.
Yes.
He did.
What was in your mind, you know, those first few missions? Like, was
And
it hard to even get on the
that's funny,
plane?
because when we were in Dijon, they had billeted us up tents out in a chalet's courtyard. I'd get up a couple of times to, not every night, but I'd get up during the night to go to the toilet, and I'd hear guys having nightmares. They were scheduled to go on the next day's mission. And I know it may sound trite, but I never worried. I swear I never worried. I figured that it's not going to help me. Okay? If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Worrying wasn't going to make one whit of difference. And it's the guys that did all that worrying that have today are having problems with, with their lives.
Right, post-traumatic stress.
It was just another day for me in a way. And I know I sound like I'm big. I'm not. I mean, it just simply that was my attitude.
I've heard of other vets with the same. They didn't really waste much time on it because it's either they had your number or they didn't have your number, and worrying about it, wasn't going to change it one bit.
Okay. Matter of fact, if anything, it caused problems.
Right, hesitations and.
Anyway, while I was still on combat, one of the guys in my tent and I went into town, and there was a USO show there, and I just happened to encounter a young lady. Trying to remember what her name was, but it was anyway. But anyway, she's not really relevant. But I'm kind of a bashful guy. Really, I'm honest. I did that back, but for some reason I decided I wanted to ask her for a date. I did, and she said okay. So, and invited us to go after the show. After the show backstage. Well, I thought I had a date with her, and this friend of mine, a guy named Oppenheimer, Frank Oppenheimer, was going to have a date with her roommate. Well, anyway, we went backstage, and I discovered that I was going to have a date with the roommate. The roommate decided she wanted me and not Frank. They call women like her, what do you call them again? Not jaguars.
Cougars?
Yeah, cougars. But she was very pretty, and I had no trouble adjusting it.
Oh, wow. Yes, very beautiful.
Anyway, they were there for about 2 weeks, and I dated her pretty regular. Anyway, Frank never seemed to mind that, though, because when that first night, we took them to dinner, and after dinner, we got ready to go, and both of them said, "Are you going to see us to our room?" And so I said, "Yeah." So we went up, took up to the room. Frank says, "Jay, we're going to have to get going. We're going to miss the bus." And Carol says, "Jay's not going to miss the bus." And he said, "Why?" She said, "Because he's staying here." And that was it. Who am I to argue?
Exactly.
Anyway, now we'll get to that last mission. We were on our way there to the target, and there was an explosion. Bang, shook the plane. We thought we'd been hit by flak. No, the tire blew out in the right engine nacelle. But when a tire, as you go up in altitude, it gets colder and the air pressure gets lower.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've got pressure in a tire on the ground, it's much higher as you get up there. We normally flew about 10,000 feet. The big guys, they flew up at 20,000. They had to have oxygen masks, we didn't. But anyway, completely lost my train of thought. Oh, okay.
You're
Okay.
on your talking
Okay.
about your last
Okay.
mission.
We looked out there, and it was on my side. I was co-pilot that day. Looked out there, and you could see the wheel was dangling. The hydraulic system had been busted. Well, we decided, the people behind us, the nacelle door that hadn't come over was going back and forth, and there was a pilot, there was a crew behind us. So we decided, with approval, to swing off and go back to the base. We knew we weren't going to land normal, and we had a load of bombs. So we get back there, and the base said, "No, you can't land here. If something happens, we got the whole Alpha group will still come in to land." So they sent us down to Lyon, France. And there was a lake out there, and we made sure the bombs were not armed, so they couldn't explode, and we dropped them in the lake. And we landed belly up. As we were skidding down the runway, the guys in the back were screaming, "Fire, fire!" Well, what they were smelling the smoke from the burned paint that was being scorched. Okay. Turned out, no, it was no fire. We skidded all the way down the runway and just off the end, probably about 30, 40 feet past the end of the runway. And my comment was that, thinking that there was a fire, the B-26, when you're on the belly, there's no escape except over the pilot. Normally you go out the bottom.
Right.
Okay. So before I could get unstrapped, the guys were jumping on my shoulder. They were going out. When I jumped out of there, I was wearing the big fleece-lined flying boots. Felt like track shoes. Running better rate. And that was it. When I got back to the base, the flight surgeon said, "Olivier, you've done 64. That's enough now." He said, "We're going to do you 65, but that's enough after having the belly landing." So that was it. They sent me on leave to recuperate.
Mm-hmm.
Went to England, a bit to London. When I got back, I was expecting to be sent back to the States because I'd finished. And I heard about something that really intrigued me. There was a service group that had two DC-3s, that's the C-47s, and they were getting ready to lose one of the pilots, and they were looking for another pilot. And I thought I would enjoy that. I did not enjoy flying the B-26. I didn't. I mean, I don't know why, but because it flew well once you got it up in the air. But landing and taking off was always but at any rate, I really enjoyed flying what we call the Goonie Bird. Okay, I was there from, that should be probably from, that was probably be from December to the end of the war, which in August. Well, actually, we didn't leave on the day the war ended. We continued flying there.
So you were flying supplies or personnel?
Yeah. Well, on one occasion, as a matter of fact, one of my best friend, who was also a pilot there with that group, and he thinks that we were there for the Battle of the Bulge. No, the Battle of the Bulge had definitely happened about 2 months or 3 months before I even got assigned there, okay? But we did fly one where we would go out almost, we'd be within, you could almost see guns flashing. We'd land and unload gas, oil, and ammunition to the troops, and they'd bring the stretchers and load up a plane, and we'd fly those back to Orly Field in Paris, France, and they'd take the guys to the hospital, and we'd go back out there sometimes 2 and 3 loads in a day. We did that, I think, about 5 times each. So it was not the Battle of the Bulge, but it was something similar. And I did not realize how much those guys went through.
Yeah.
Okay, now we got shot at, but we were at 10,000 feet. Matter of fact, we used to make a joke about it. The Germans had their flags set for different things, and they had 2,000, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 B-26, and you're totally unarmed. You're flying at a low altitude. They could shoot you with pistols and rifles, and you're flying slow.
Yeah, 120 miles an hour at the most, maybe.
I don't know. I don't. To tell you how I would have reacted, I cannot. I might have changed my blasé attitude. Still, though, it didn't want to do any good to worry.
Did your plane, any of the planes, did you ever take flak damage in any of your planes, or were you able to avoid it?
Yeah, sure.
Some.
There were 2 types of flak. One was called tracking flak. That's like when you're a duck hunter out there trying to figure out what the pellets would get there at the same time the duck did. The other one was called barrage flak. That's the one that was really unnerving. On a real important target, they'd have maybe 100 guns around. And once you turned on the identification point, the IP, and started on, the bomb bay doors open, there's no change. You're going straight ahead, and they know that. So they start shooting in the area that you're going to have to fly through. And you see this big black cloud with orange flashes going on, and you've got to fly right through that. That was a little nerve. And I think that happened to me about 3 or 4 times. Most of it is tracking flak. And we also had what we call milk runs, where there was no flak at all. I would say probably 8 or 9 of there was absolutely no flak. But
that's interesting that you said you didn't see any fighters, because watching the movies and the television dramas and stuff like that, they make it seem like every bomber crew was just covered with enemy fighters all the time. But that's interesting to hear your perspective of that, though.
Well, you're looking at a different thing. I didn't fly out of England over Germany and France. I was in the Mediterranean, okay? And that's why I say I never saw a fighter. I guarantee you those guys that flew out of England saw fighters, okay? Got that tail shot.
Is that because we had pretty much established air superiority over Italy at this time, or?
No, it just, yeah, over that area.
Right.
Over the Italian peninsula.
Right.
Yeah, and see, as I said, I got there, my first ones were in January of 1944. And no, I don't envy the guys that were flying out of the flak bait, okay, when they were, was it 25 missions?
Mm-hmm.
Remember, I flew 65. Ain't nobody ever flew 65 out of England. So I'll give them credit. They made that. But that's about it. I mean, it's can't think of much else. Yeah.
So let's talk about when you came home. What year did you come home, and how was that adjustment?
Well, okay. Well, that's anticlimactic. While I was flying at C-47, we made frequent trips to England, and I did meet a young lady. I love young ladies, Delia Packham, and we dated pretty regular. Now, that unlike the Cougar, that one was platonic, not a pick, not what I wanted, but what she wanted. But I did enjoy her company, and we spent trying to remember what my thought was on that. Hey, thinking pretty girls just even at
Easily
96, even at
distracted.
96, I'm telling. But yeah, that's the
So you were talking about coming home though. You're in England and
okay.
you were dating a
That
girl
okay.
and
That's where I was going.
trying to bring you back home.
Okay, we left uh, we left Dijon. The guys, they took a plane. Plane wasn't going to land in Bishop Dartford, which is where my girlfriend was. So I took the slow boat. I took a train, took a boat over across. So I didn't go with my gang, my troops. Anyway, I met with Delia and we had a date, and I said goodbye to her, and then I headed up to Liverpool. That's where we were going to catch them, and my guys were still there, waiting. Military, the old military thing, hurry up and wait.
Mm-hmm.
But at any rate, and that was, there was a little cover, a little thing here. The ground and in the rooms were covered with pistols and rifles. The guys had brought back from and they were warned that they could not bring them back into the United States. Well, a lot of the guys took that to heart and decided not to try. Well, I'd been carrying a 45 Model 911 all through the war, and I was not going to leave that behind. And I won't go into detail on how I managed to have it. They have what they call a personal effects officer. And I was assigned while we were there in Dijon, I was assigned to a young man who had been shot down, as far as we knew, was dead. And I got all of his stuff, and he didn't take his pistol that day. So when I had to turn my pistol in, I turned his in. I wound up with mine. They didn't miss it. Let me just put it this way.
Of course, yeah.
Anyway, we left. It would have to be that we left there about the 6th or 7th of August on a Liberty ship. I don't remember the name of it. Doesn't matter. Matter of fact, I've got this people. That's where we came. We were one day out of Boston on my 22nd birthday. And we were listening to the radio. The guys, a DJ playing music. And he says, and to the next plane, the next song will be dedicated to Lieutenant Jules Olivier on board the such and such plane. And his 22nd birthday. Turned out that this guy that I said was my best friend, he called, got on the radio and had him call in and ask that. I never forgot that. I never did. He's, to this day, I consider him to be my very best friend. He's hard of hearing too. The last time we had an opportunity to talk on the phone, my son was here and he was laughing like man. I said, what's the matter? He said, Dad, have you ever seen that two hard of hearing guys trying to talk to each other on the damn phone? Oh. But anyway, his name is Ralph Waldrop.
And where does he live?
He lives in Mayfield, Kentucky.
Mayfield, Kentucky. And he's still alive?
To the best of my knowledge, I just talked to him here about a week ago.
That's amazing. Good.
You know, most of the guys, you lose track of them. When you get back to the stage, you go back with your own lives. I stayed in the service, he didn't. And some years ago, I attended a reunion for the Martin Marauder B-26 in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And out of all the guys that showed up, there was only one that I had known during combat time. And I told my wife, I said, you know, I'd really love to see some of those guys, particularly the ones that I was with in the service group. And she said, well, why don't you call them? I said, call? I mean, I have no idea where they are. And I said, but you know, there's one that might still be in his hometown. So I got her on the phone and I said, she said, what city? I said, Mayfield, Kentucky. And she said, what name? I said, Ralph Waltrop. She said, you want his office or his business? His office or his home? So that was good. And since then, they would come down here with the whole family. We have shrimp boils and crab boils out on the porch, and they play golf out at the time. So it's just really, it's been a family thing. My wife and his wife really hit it up. They really loved each other. So it's been great.